The velvet ropes outside the Sinclair estate trembled as reporters jostled for the perfect shot. Cameras clicked like gunfire. A woman in a headset whispered into her mic, "Bride arriving in 60 seconds. Cue the violinists." Inside the grand marble foyer, sunlight streamed through crystal chandeliers, catching the gold embroidery of Sasha's wedding gown. She turned in the mirror, admiring the silhouette. It clung to her body like a secret she'd waited years to show the world. David Sinclair, 39, sharp-jawed billionaire, and the subject of every society magazine's obsession, stood on the landing above, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked down at the scene below, staff pacing with checklists, decorators adding last-minute orchids to the arch, and Sasha beaming at her reflection. He should have felt triumphant. This was everything he'd chased: power, prestige, passion, and Sasha, the wild, beautiful best friend of his ex-wife, now his bride. But his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, because he remembered it had been Isla's idea to host their anniversary party at this same estate 5 years ago. He remembered her spinning barefoot in the garden that night, drunk on champagne and hope. She wore a white silk slip under a robe, not a gown, just something soft and flowing. That was the first time she showed him the dress. "I'm keeping this for something real," she whispered, holding the custom gown against her body in the mirror, giggling. "Something sacred." He'd laughed, kissed her neck, and told her she'd look beautiful in anything. But that night was the last time Isla smiled like that. 3 weeks later, Sasha had moved into their guest house, just for a month. 2 months later, Isla was gone. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Now Sasha twirled in that same dress. Isla had left it behind, assuming, foolishly, that no one would ever touch it. But Sasha had found it, claimed it, tailored it to fit her own story. David inhaled sharply as Sasha turned to face him from the base of the stairs. "Do I look sacred?" she teased, lips curling. He stared too long. "You look perfect." But behind her, in the corner of the landing, he saw it. The full-length mirror that had once belonged to Isla. The last thing she'd taken a photo in. The one she used to leave lipstick messages on when they still joked in the mornings. Sasha stepped closer. She touched his chest, smoothing the lapel of his jacket. "You're quiet. Just tired," he lied. "You're not having second thoughts?" she asked lightly, but her fingers tensed around his jacket button. "No," he said too quickly, but his gaze flicked back to the mirror, because in his mind for a split second, it wasn't Sasha he saw in the gown. It was Isla, smiling, radiant, untouched by betrayal. And for the first time that day, David felt afraid. Afraid that what he had destroyed might still find a way back. And when it did, it wouldn't be quiet. It would arrive loud and unforgettable. The air inside the cathedral was heavy with candle wax and whispered envy. Rows of silk-draped pews brimmed with society's finest. Editors, CEOs, celebrities in muted designer tones. A string quartet played something soft and classical, just loud enough to mask the murmur of the crowd. Sasha stood beneath the towering floral arch, her gown shimmering under the filtered light that poured in through the stained glass windows. She looked serene, radiant even, but her grip on the bouquet had tightened. David stood across from her in a black Tom Ford tuxedo, jaw clenched. He hadn't blinked in nearly a minute. The officiant cleared his throat, voice echoing slightly in the vaulted space. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Then screech. A violent burst of sound sliced through the stillness. Every head turned toward the cathedral doors. Outside, through the tall arched windows, a sleek black limo came to an abrupt halt at the curb. No one moved. The musicians stopped mid-note. Sasha's mouth twitched. "What the hell?" she muttered under her breath. David didn't move. Not even to look. The massive doors creaked open a moment later, as if time itself had hesitated before letting her in. Isla, hair in a low, elegant bun, crimson dress clinging to her body like silk poured over fire. No jewelry, no smile, just presence. But it was who followed behind her that stole the air from the room. 4 children, identical, small, silent, holding hands in perfect formation. Little black dress shoes, pale blue suits, matching curls. Their faces weren't familiar to the crowd, but to David each one was a haunting echo. The same nose, the same chin, and God help him, his mother's eyes. He stumbled back a half step before correcting himself. Isla didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her eyes scanned the altar, landed on Sasha, paused, then moved to David, and stayed there. There was no fury on her face, no visible malice, just calm precision, like a surgeon prepping before the first incision. A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. One woman in the second row gasped. The officiant looked helplessly from bride to groom to Isla. David tried to speak, but his mouth went dry. Sasha forced a smile, teeth too sharp, voice trembling. What is this? Some last-minute, dramatic plea? Shut up, David muttered under his breath. She turned. Excuse me? But David didn't hear her. He was staring at one of the children. A boy, slightly taller than the rest. The child tilted his head to the right, a gesture David had done 1,000 times in boardrooms when analyzing a pitch. His knees weakened. Isla stepped forward slowly, her heels echoing in the silent cathedral. Then she stopped just inside the E threshold. Don't stop on my account, she said, voice clear, cutting through the awkward tension like a blade. Please, go ahead. I'd love to hear the vows. Sasha's face fell. David finally blinked. The children stood still, silent. 4 tiny statues. And in that moment, every camera that had been pointed at Sasha since morning turned toward Isla. Every dream Sasha had carefully stolen now stood in front of her, not dead but multiplied, and in David's chest something cracked. A guilt buried years ago now clawed its way up his throat. He didn't know whether to run or kneel. 5 years earlier, the townhouse smelled like eucalyptus and vanilla. Isla's signature candles burned in every corner. She sat cross-legged, on the floor, laughing as Sasha flipped through bridal magazines, her legs kicked up on the coffee table, red wine dangerously close to spilling. Don't go, Lace, Sasha said, biting into a strawberry. You're not a grandma. Isla smiled. David likes lace. Sasha rolled her eyes. Of course he does. He also likes steak over salmon, your hair long not short, and no red lipstick. Isla didn't answer. They had been close since childhood, raised like sisters, though not by blood. Isla's family had taken Sasha in after her mother died. She had a room in their house, a seat at their table, and when they both grew up, Isla married a man Sasha introduced her to, David Sinclair. Isla had no idea, back then, that Sasha would eventually take everything. David had started coming home later, claiming meetings, jet lag, stress. Isla tried not to ask. She was tired of sounding like a checklist. One night she made his favorite dinner, rosemary lamb and wine from the vineyard where he proposed. He didn't show. No call, no apology. She waited in silence, staring at the flickering candle, feeling like a ghost in her own kitchen. 2 days later, Sasha showed up at her door with flowers and that smirk Isla once thought was charming. David told me to give you these, she said, eyes dancing. He said you've been feeling a little off lately. Off. That was the word David used when she cried in the shower, when she asked about his distance, when she curled up beside him at night and felt nothing in return. Isla forced a smile. Thanks, tell him I'm fine. But she wasn't. Something had shifted. She felt it in the way Sasha lingered near David's chair at dinners, in the way his texts grew shorter while Sasha's visits grew longer. And one night, when David left his phone unlocked on the coffee table, Isla saw what she had tried not to see. A single text. Last night was perfect. You remember what you whispered? S. She didn't cry. She simply stood, walked to the window, and stared at the streetlights until dawn. The confrontation never happened. Isla didn't want a scene. She wanted a clean exit, but fate never allows that kind of grace. She returned early from a doctor's appointment, David's birthday surprise. The house was too quiet. Her heels clicked across the tile as she walked toward the guest house. The doctor was slightly ajar. Inside, Sasha was straddling David, his shirt unbuttoned. Her lipstick smeared across his collarbone, the same shade Isla once wore. They didn't notice her. She stood there, still, silent, like furniture. Then she turned around and walked away. No scream, no shattered glass, no ultimatums. Just a woman, stepping out of her own life. Sasha's voice still echoed in Isla's head years later. You always had everything. The house, the man, the name. I just wanted something that was mine. And she took it. But what Sasha didn't know was what Isla carried when she left. David stood motionless in the cathedral's bridal suite, the chaos of the interrupted ceremony still pulsing through the stone walls. Outside, murmurs floated like smoke, distant but insistent. He could hear the quartet trying to play again, something light trembling. He couldn't stop seeing the boy's face, the tilt of the head, the way he narrowed his eyes when confused. It was him. He poured a drink with a shaking hand, whiskey neat, and sat at the edge of the velvet chaise. The weight of the tux jacket now felt suffocating. Somewhere down the hall, Sasha was shouting into her phone. Probably her publicist, or a florist, or God. He didn't care. His gaze drifted toward the mahogany desk in the corner. That desk had followed him from house to house, city to city. The drawers full of past deals, old watches, and forgotten things. But the top left drawer never changed. It stayed locked for years, not out of secrecy but neglect. Now, without thinking, he stood and opened it. Inside lay a single cream envelope, edges frayed, corners softened by time. His name was written in Isla's looping script, the ink faint, where the pen must have paused. He hadn't read it the day she left. Too angry, too arrogant. He assumed it was a goodbye he didn't need to hear. His fingers hesitated before opening it, the flap already brittle. The scent that rose wasn't perfume, but paper aged with sadness. He unfolded the note. David, I didn't scream because I'd already broken inside. I didn't stay because I knew you wouldn't choose me. But I need you to know, I wasn't leaving just for me. I'm pregnant. I'm carrying everything we were supposed to be. I won't fight you for support or attention. I don't need a man who forgot who I am. But someday, when you look at your reflection and wonder what you lost, know that I see it in their eyes every single day. Isla. David exhaled sharply, sinking into the leather chair. The words blurred. He'd been so sure she walked out to punish him. So sure she was too proud to beg. But she had begged, in ink. And he had shelved it like a junk receipt. Years had passed. Weddings, deals, Sasha, all built on a lie of finality. But Isla never really left. Not completely. She raised his children. 4. Alone. And didn't ask him for a cent. A knock broke the silence. The door creaked open and Sasha stepped in, makeup smeared, chest heaving. What are you doing in here? She snapped. David looked at her slowly, held up the letter. She told me. You knew, didn't you? Sasha paused. Told you what? He didn't blink. She was pregnant. Sasha's face paled. Her jaw twitched, but she said nothing. David stood. Calm. Cold. You burned the first envelope she gave me, didn't you? You said she left a note, but there was nothing on the counter when I came home. Sasha took a step back. David, he cut her off. How long have you known? She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a voice from behind the door, small, soft. Are you my dad? The penthouse had always been Sasha's favorite weapon, a 32nd floor glass cube overlooking the skyline, part luxury, part throne room. Every detail had her fingerprints. The velvet blue sectional flown in from Milan, the minimalist chandelier made from blown Murano glass, the imported marble in the bathroom that cost more than most people's cars. This was supposed to be her reward, her reign. She paced barefoot across the herringbone floors now, robe slipping off one shoulder, mascara smudged, hair unbrushed. Her phone buzzed again on the kitchen island. She didn't want to answer it, but she did. "What do you mean it's still contested?" Sasha hissed, voice sharp, low. On the other end, David's attorney, Gerald. Marks exhaled slowly. "I mean, Isla Sinclair is still legally your fiancé's wife. Your marriage ceremony today has no legal weight. Not while the original marriage remains undissolved." Sasha gripped the edge of the counter. "That's not possible. He filed. Years ago." "Filed, yes. Finalized? No. There's no decree, on record, and more critically," Gerald cleared his throat, "the prenuptial asset division from that marriage remains intact. She still holds 50% of all jointly acquired assets during the marriage, including, unfortunately for you, the penthouse." Silence. Then Sasha laughed. Once. Hollow. "No, that can't be. It's binding. Her name is still on the title." She hung up. The room shrank around her. All those nights mocking Isla behind her back, calling her weak, forgettable, a glorified roommate. They came back like echoes. Ugly echoes. Because now Isla was the legal owner of everything Sasha had built her fake little empire on, her kitchen, her closet, even the chaise she had posed on in a bridal robe this morning, sipping champagne and pretending the world was finally hers. The illusion cracked. She walked into the hallway, yanked open the master closet door. Inside, her couture collection. Gowns, shoes. The diamond-studded heels David had once said were too much but bought anyway to shut her up. All hanging on racks Isla technically owned. She laughed again. This time it sounded like a scream that had lost its way. Later that night, David returned. He looked worn. His tie was gone. His jaw was unshaven. He didn't speak as he entered the penthouse, just dropped his keys on the entryway tray and glanced. Around Sasha stood waiting, arms crossed. "You didn't tell me," she said quietly. He met her eyes. "Tell you what?" "That she never signed. That she still owns half of everything, that this house isn't mine, that this life isn't mine." David said nothing. "You let me plan a wedding in a house that's half hers?" Her voice cracked, now fury and fear bleeding through. David's shoulders sagged. "I thought it was settled." "No, David. You hoped it was." He looked away. "I built a life with you," she whispered. "No," he replied. "You decorated a life you stole." Sasha's eyes filled, but she blinked it away fast. Too fast. "I didn't take her from you," she said, one last swing at revision. "She wasn't yours to take," he said softly. Behind them, the screen on the wall blinked to life. A breaking news alert, a photo of Isla and the children. The headline read, "Sinclair Family Secrets Uncovered. Mother of 4 breaks, silence." The silence in David's study was taut, like the seconds before a courtroom verdict. Outside, the windows the city buzzed beneath a lavender dusk. Inside, David stood behind his desk, jaw tight, hands gripping the edge like he was bracing for an earthquake. Across from him, Isla sat straight-backed in one of the leather chairs, legs crossed, one hand resting lightly on a manila folder in her lap. She looked composed. Too composed. The children were down the hall, cared for by a temporary nanny Isla brought with her. Sasha wasn't home. She had stormed out 2 hours ago, heels echoing like a threat. David broke the silence. "I want a test." Isla didn't flinch. "You already had one." "No," he snapped. "A real one. Court authorized. Chain of custody. Supervised. You were served," she said evenly. "You just didn't open the envelope." David's lip curled. "You expect me to believe that? That you, what, Hand-delivered DNA results and I just missed them? She placed the manila folder on the desk and slid it toward him with the same care one might handle broken glass. I sent it certified, 2 years ago. Your assistant signed for it. I have the receipt. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside. 2 stapled pages on white medical letterhead, clearly dated. A lab logo in the top corner. Beneath it, 4 names. Each child listed with a corresponding test number. And then, in bold, probability of paternity, 99.98%. Father, David Sinclair, his. Throat tightened. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the rustle of the papers as he turned the page again, like something might change if he read it fast enough. Isla watched him. No gloating, no venom, just stillness. You had every resource. She said softly. Every lawyer, every private investigator, and still it took seeing them in person for you to even ask. David leaned back against the desk, rubbing his hands over his face. Why didn't you fight harder? Isla stood, her voice steady. Because I was already fighting to raise 4 humans you helped create. And I didn't have the luxury of ego. Her tone didn't rise. That made it worse. You should have told me again, he said, voice hoarse now. I did, she replied. Through lawyers, through paperwork, through silence. You weren't listening. He looked up. Do they know who I am? Isla paused. They know who they are. He swallowed hard. She gathered her purse, sliding it over her shoulder with casual grace. As she reached the door, she stopped. They don't need your name, David. They need truth. Start there. She left him in the fading light, the folder open on his desk, staring at evidence that had sat ignored for 2 years. But just as Isla reached the elevator, David's voice called out from down the hall. Wait. What do they call me? She turned slightly, barely enough to be heard. Nothing, she said. Yet. The elevator doors slid shut. Sasha stood in front of the glass boutique counter, Chanel clutch under her arm, her favorite stylist waiting behind the register. With an eager smile, she tapped her card again. And again. The chip reader beeped each time, louder, crueler, declined. A beat of silence. Could you try another? The associate asked politely, though the stiffness in her smile hinted at recognition. This wasn't just any customer. This was Sasha Carlyle, the newly minted Mrs. Sinclair, according to page 6, or so everyone thought. Sasha swallowed hard and slid another card across the counter, this one platinum. The screen blinked. Declined. Her stomach twisted. The room felt warmer suddenly. The once inviting gold lights above now, harsh like interrogation lamps. Give me a moment, she muttered, grabbing her phone and turning away from the counter like she had somewhere important to be, somewhere that wasn't crumbling beneath her. She dialed David. Voicemail. Again. David, she hissed into the phone. Why the hell are the cards frozen? No answer. She tried Gerald, his lawyer. Straight to voicemail. Then she opened her banking app, error loading balance, account access restricted. Her fingers trembled. She tried her name on the joint account, then her private one. Nothing. All of it. Frozen. A cold realization crept up her spine. Back at the penthouse, she paced like a woman trying to outrun the truth. The apartment felt larger now. Empty. Every square inch screamed borrowed time. She called her financial advisor. Ms. Carlyle, the voice said carefully, we've received notification that your accounts are under review due to a pending marital dispute. What dispute? Sasha snapped. The prenuptial agreement filed between you and Mr. Sinclair only holds if his prior marriage was legally dissolved before your union. Since that's not the case, he's still married to Isla. Yes, ma'am, which means your financial protections are temporarily void, pending court clarification. She hung up. No tears. Not yet. Instead, she walked slowly to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and tried to find the woman who had once believed she was untouchable. but her reflection was different now. Smudged, diminished, unchosen. Later that night, David came home. He looked tired, like the weight of two lives was finally pulling his spine out of line. "You froze the accounts," she said quietly. He sighed. "It's not that simple." "No, David, it is. You turned off the faucet the second she walked back into the room." "I have 4 kids," he said, emotion thinly veiled. "Children I didn't know I had. Isla raised them on her own while we were sipping champagne in Italy." Sasha took a step toward him. "And now what? You punish me for not being her." "No," David replied. "I'm punishing myself for believing that you were better." She slapped him. It wasn't hard, but it echoed. He didn't flinch. They stood in silence, breathing, neither blinking. Then Sasha's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you think she'll take you back?" David looked away. "I don't know, but I know she deserves to say no." Sasha's eyes filled with something unnameable, grief, rage, or maybe just the hollow sound of losing without dying. She picked up her purse. "Where will you go?" he asked. She turned at the door. "I don't need to go anywhere, David. Legally, I don't exist." And then she was gone. The ballroom sat mostly empty now. The guests had long since fled, some politely, others with open disgust. Once Isla walked in with the children. The quartet had packed up. Champagne glasses remained half-filled. Flower petals, trampled under designer shoes, lay forgotten on the marble floor. David stood near the bar, tie undone, staring into a glass of untouched scotch. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of ice machines and his own shallow breathing. Then the side doors opened. A courier stepped in, unsure, holding a small black envelope. His hesitation suggested he wasn't used to delivering anything in places like this. "Mr. Sinclair?" he asked. David turned. The man extended the envelope. "Legal courier, delivered as instructed. Signature not required." David frowned, taking it slowly. "Who sent this?" But the man was already gone. He pulled out a flash drive from the envelope. Sleek, matte, unbranded. No name, no message. Just a post-it with one word: play. His instincts screamed to toss it, but his gut told him exactly who sent it. He found the media station near the DJ booth, plugged it in. The folder opened automatically. Mistressfiles.mp4, he clicked play. The video was edited, sharp, and cinematic in its precision. First, grainy hotel footage from 4 years ago. David entering a penthouse suite. 20 minutes later, Sasha followed, hoodie over her head, sunglasses on indoors. A timestamp in the corner, 2 months before Isla left. Cut to restaurant receipts, 2 of them in Aspen, charged to David's private card. Wine bottles nearing $800 each. Dates that matched weekends. Isla thought he was away on business. Then, audio, a voicemail from Sasha, her voice soft, seductive. "He's asleep. I'm still wearing your ring. She thinks we're just friends, but I've already taken her place. She just doesn't know it yet." David's spine straightened. He recognized the tone. The hunger. The cruelty beneath the sweetness. Next, phone. Logs. Dozens of late-night calls between him and Sasha during a time when Isla had been hospitalized for a pregnancy scare. He didn't even remember that. And finally, a photo. David and Sasha, on a yacht in Capri. His hand wrapped tightly around her waist, her lips brushing his ear. The timestamp? Isla's birthday. He stared at the screen, frozen. The scotch glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the hardwood, amber liquid bleeding like guilt. He hadn't just betrayed Isla. He had erased her. That night, the story broke, across social media. Then tabloids, then business news. Exclusive. Billionaire David Sinclair's mistress revealed, while wife was pregnant with quadruplets. Sinclair wedding implodes as former wife returns, legal and financial scandal brewing. David's phone lit up with texts, board members, PR teams, investors, but none from Isla and none from his children. Only one message came through that mattered, from Isla's lawyer. What you hid in shadows, she chose to reveal in light. Consider this her closure. The penthouse felt colder than usual. Even with the sunset casting golden light across the high-rise windows, the space echoed with silence. Empty champagne flutes lined the bar. A single heel lay toppled by the couch, the remnants of a wedding never completed, like a set abandoned mid-scene. David stood by the window, hands shoved in his pockets, watching the skyline dim. Beneath the tailored suit, his body was tight with shame, exhaustion, and something darker. The realization that the empire he'd built on charm and ambition was beginning to rot from the center. He heard the elevator ping behind him. Sasha. She entered, briskly, heels sharp against the floor, her phone clutched in one hand, tabloids in the other. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, unforgiving bun, like armor. Her face was unreadable. He turned slightly but didn't greet her. "You're on every platform," she said coolly. Even the business pages finally caught up. "Mistress Files, classy?" David remained still. "They used that photo," she added with a bitter laugh. "Capri, you remember that trip? You said I was the only thing that made you feel alive." "Remember," he muttered. Sasha flung the papers onto the table. They slid, fanned out, one with his face, another with hers, a third with Isla, and the children. "You think this is my punishment?" she snapped. "You think I lost everything? No, David, you lost everything." His eyes darkened. "You helped me lose it." Sasha stepped closer, voice rising. "Don't put this on me. You ruined 2 women, one you broke, the other you used to bandage your guilt." David's jaw tightened. "You knew she was pregnant." "I didn't know it was 4, Sasha shot back. "But does it matter now?" She moved closer still, inches from his face. "I waited for years," she said, voice lower now. To matter more than her. And when I finally did, it was still about her." David's breath hitched. The pressure building in his chest had nowhere to go. He turned away, then spun back and slammed his fist against the wall behind her. The drywall cracked, a vase on the console trembled, then shattered on the floor. Sasha jumped. He didn't touch her, but the violence in his body filled the room like heat. "I never wanted it to end like this," he said through clenched teeth. She stared at the broken glass, then back at him. "End," she whispered. "David." This was never a beginning. A silence fell between them, deeper than before. Something had shifted. Not in anger, in recognition. This was it. She gathered her coat slowly. "I won't fight you," she said, voice flat. "Not for money, not for name, but just know this. Whatever future you were trying to buy, it died the second you ignored your past." Then she walked out. From across the building, Isla stood on a neighboring terrace, arms folded, watching the lights of the penthouse flicker behind sheer curtains. She saw Sasha leave, head high but shoulders hunched. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. The cafe was tucked into a quiet corner of the Upper West Side. No signs, no paparazzi, no pressure. Just the aroma of espresso, the clink of ceramic cups, and the low hum of weekday conversations. Isla liked places like this, places that didn't ask for explanations. She sat near the window in a soft cream sweater, watching her children spread crayons and napkins across the table. They giggled, whispering over doodles of cats and castles, entirely unaware of the storm they'd walked through to arrive here. Across from her, the second chair sat empty, until it didn't. David approached, slowly, unsure of his place in this small, sacred world she'd created. No suit today. Just jeans and a navy sweater, sleeves pushed to the elbow. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man trying to remember who he used to be. Isla didn't look up as he sat. She finished her sip of tea before meeting his gaze. "You said 10 minutes, she said calmly. "You have 9 left." David cleared his throat. "Thank you for agreeing to this." "I didn't agree to anything," she replied. "You asked. I picked a public place." He glanced at the children. One of the girls looked up and smiled at him, the kind of innocent, toothy grin that cracked something in his chest. He swallowed. I needed to see you outside. All that noise. I don't know who I was in that world anymore. Isla tilted her head. You were someone who looked at love and mistook it for a weakness. David looked away, ashamed. I didn't know how to be what you needed. You didn't even try, she said softly. Their eyes locked. Not in rage, but in clarity. Two people who had already walked through the fire and now stood in its quiet, smoldering aftermath. I missed everything, he said. Their first words, first steps, first fevers. I didn't even know their names until last week. Isla's fingers toyed with the edge of her mug. You chose not to know. They deserve more, he said. Can I start over? Isla studied him for a long time. Then she looked at the empty chair beside her. You see that seat? She asked. He nodded. I saved it for someone, she said. But not for you. For me. For the version of myself I had to become when I was left with nothing but 4 cribs and a broken heart. I sat across from that chair every day, reminding myself I didn't need to be chosen to matter. David's eyes watered. Not performative. Real. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I'm just asking not to disappear. She looked at the kids, then back at him. They don't need a performance, she said. They need presence. He nodded. Then I'll show up. Every time. Isla reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A schedule, drop-offs, art class, appointments. She slid it across the table. I'm not promising anything, she said. This is their routine, not yours. David picked it up with both hands like it was glass. She stood to leave. One child tugged her sleeve. Mom, can we go get muffins now? Isla smiled. Yes, sweetheart. David stood too instinctively, but paused when he saw her eyes. You don't have to follow us, she said. Not yet. Then she walked out with the children, her hand holding 2 of theirs, her heart no longer holding him, and the chair beside him, still warm. But no longer his. The clouds had parted after a long, stubborn rain. Isla stood at the edge of the driveway, coat buttoned over her burgundy dress, the fabric catching the wind just enough to remind her of movement, of how far she'd come. A sleek Blacktown car idled beside her, the door open. Inside, the laughter of her children echoed faintly like a melody carried on memory. She turned for one last glance at the mansion. The same house she had once called home. The one she had walked out of barefoot, pregnant, unseen. Now it sat behind her like a museum, full of things that used to matter. David stood in the entryway, one hand on the doorframe, the other hanging limp by his side. His expression was unreadable, hollowed. He had tried in small ways to show up, picking the kids up from daycare, bringing them books, remembering their names. But Isla never promised him a return to the past. She only offered him room in the queue. Present, if he earned it. Sasha was gone. Quietly. No final blowout, no screaming match. Just a single suitcase and a key left on the marble island. Her silence spoke more than any tantrum could, and now the house felt cavernous. Not just empty, but echoing, the kind of silence that rings. David stepped forward. You're really leaving? Isla nodded. I was never staying. The wind picked up. Her hair brushed across her cheek. He looked at the car, at the kids peeking from the window, waving. They'll forget me. She smiled, faint but certain. Only if you let them. He stepped closer, searching for the right words. He didn't beg this time. He knew better. Knew she wasn't a woman you begged. She was a woman you should have held when you had the chance. You look like yourself again, he said. I never stopped, she replied. There was a long beat of silence. Then Isla reached into the car, pulled something out, a hanger wrapped in garment plastic. Inside it, the The red dress, the one Sasha wore at the wedding, the one Isla had designed, the one that never belonged to either of them in the end. She handed it to him. Return it, or burn it, doesn't matter. He took it hesitantly. Why bring it back? She met his gaze. Because I don't carry things that don't fit anymore. He looked down at the fabric swaying in the breeze, the silk catching one last glint of sunlight before turning dull. No longer symbolic, just material. I'm not angry, Isla added, voice lower now. That's what confuses you the most, isn't it? David nodded slowly. I'm not angry, she repeated. I'm free. She turned without waiting for another word, opened the door, slid into the car. The kids squealed something about muffins and cartoons. Isla leaned back, letting the sound of them fill her ears. The kind of chaos she had once feared she'd never be enough for. Now it was hers, not borrowed, not stolen, built. The driver pulled away slowly. The wheels cracked softly over the gravel. Isla didn't look back. Not once. David stood in the doorway, holding the dress, alone. Inside the house, the air was still. In the back of the closet, the one Sasha had claimed as hers, the hanger swung slightly. The velvet one Isla had kept her original wedding dress on. It hung bare now, the ghost of its curve catching the light. And next to it, on a forgotten hook, the red dress drifted side to side with the open window breeze. A dress never hers to wear. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word and tell us where you're watching from.